The Jatiran throne room smelled like ozone and something sweet I couldn't name. I stood in chains that hummed against my wrists, electromagnetic fields keeping my hands locked at waist level. Around me, the assembled court wore expressions I'd learned to read over 6 months of captivity, contempt mixed with curiosity. They wanted to see the human break. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Queen Shlara sat elevated on a crystalline throne that seemed to grow from the floor itself. Her skin shifted colors with her mood, currently a deep violet that meant calculation. 4 arms rested on the armrests, fingers tapping in a pattern that her advisors probably understood. I'd learned to watch those fingers. They told me more than her face ever did. Captain Marcus Webb. Her voice resonated through translation implants embedded in my skull. You have been found guilty of trespassing in Sovereign Zatiran space, destruction of a patrol vessel, and resisting lawful capture. Once at the initial tribunal, once at the appeals hearing I hadn't requested. The third time apparently carried weight. The Council of Matriarchs has reviewed your case, she continued. Her lower left hand gestured, and a holographic display materialized between us. My ship, the Wanderer, hung in space as Zatiran fighters reduced it to debris. They have determined that execution would serve as appropriate deterrence to other humans who might violate our borders. Earth was 73 light-years away. No one was coming for me. However, Shlara's skin rippled toward amber. I am permitted to offer clemency under ancient tradition. Once per solar cycle, a condemned individual may make a final request. If that request pleases the throne and can be fulfilled without harm to the realm, it will be granted in exchange for your life sentence being commuted to service. This was entertainment for them. Watching the alien grovel? Most request freedom, Shlara said, which cannot be granted. Others request riches, which holds no interest for me. Some request death, which I find tiresome. Her 4 eyes fixed on me, unblinking. What do you request, Captain Webb? The cellmate before me had mentioned it during his final days. A Krathian smuggler who'd asked for his ship back and been laughed out of the throne room before his execution. He'd told me to be smart, to ask for something small. A better cell, access to Earth literature, something that might be granted. But I'd spent 6 months studying this species, reading every text they'd allowed me, watching their social dynamics during my twice-weekly trips to the Waste Reclamation Center. The Jatirans valued directness as much as they valued strength. Their entire culture was built on hierarchies established through honest challenge, and I'd spent those 6 months watching Queen Shlara during my tribunals, watching the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. You, I said clearly. The ambient sound of the throne room, the quiet conversations, the rustling of ceremonial robes, the soft hum of environmental systems, died instantly. Shlara's skin went pure white, a color I'd never seen on any Jatiran. Around the hall, guards shifted their grips on their weapons. An advisor near the throne made a choking sound. Clarify your request, Shlara said, her voice dangerously quiet. I request you, I repeated, meeting her gaze. Your companionship, your time, your presence. I want to know the person behind the throne. The hall remained frozen. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. This is an outrage, a voice called from the left. A male advisor, his crest fully extended in aggression. Guards, remove this insolent... Silence. Shlara didn't raise her voice, but it cut through the space like a blade. The advisor's crest collapsed immediately. She stood, and the movement drew every eye. 4 arms spread in a gesture I'd seen during ceremonial observations. Her skin cycled through colors too quickly for me to track. Violet to amber to green to something like silver. You understand what you ask. Her voice carried something new, not anger. Something almost like hope. I understand that I've been watching you for 6 months, I said. I've seen how you rule with fairness, even when it costs you. How you read poetry in the garden when you think no one's looking. How you stopped the execution of that Krathian child even when your advisors demanded blood. I paused. I understand that you're brilliant and isolated, and every person in this room wants something from you except the honest truth. The silence stretched so long I thought I'd miscalculated everything. Then Shlara's skin settled into a soft gold I'd never seen before. The human makes a request that is unprecedented, she said to the assembled court, and thereby fascinating. She descended 3 steps toward me. But I am queen of the Jatiran Empire. I do not grant companionship like a commodity. My stomach dropped. However, she continued, and something in her voice made me look up, I accept the challenge of his request. Captain Marcus Webb, your execution is commuted. You will remain in the palace, no longer as prisoner, but as— She paused, considering, as one who has made his intentions clear. She gestured, and my chains dissolved. We shall see, Queen Shlara said, her 4 eyes locked on mine, if you can survive what you have requested. The cord erupted, but I barely heard it. All I could see was the slight curve at the corner of her mouth. The first time I'd seen her smile. My new quarters were 17 floors above my cell, with windows overlooking the capital city of Zatara Prime. I stood at those windows for the first hour, processing what had just happened. I'd gambled everything on a hunch and somehow hadn't been executed on the spot. A chime at the door interrupted my thoughts. Enter, I called, remembering the word in Jothiran a moment too late. The guard who entered was someone I recognized. Captain Velshara, head of the Queen's personal security. Her crest was neutral, but her skin carried warning patterns of red and black. You have been granted freedom of movement within the palace complex, she said, without preamble. But understand this, human. If you harm Her Majesty in any way, I will personally ensure your death takes weeks. Understood, I said, meeting her gaze. I have no intention of harming her. Intentions and actions diverge frequently. Velshara moved closer, and I noticed she was a full head taller than me. Especially among your species. We have studied Earth's history. Violence and deception seem to be your primary exports. That's not— I started, but she cut me off. I do not care for your explanations. I care only that you understand the consequences. She handed me a data tablet. Your schedule. The Queen has agreed to dine with you 3 times per week. You will also attend her public audiences on rest days. These arrangements are temporary, pending evaluation of your conduct. I took the tablet, scanning the schedule. Every meeting was accompanied by detailed protocol notes. This is very structured. Did you expect otherwise? Velshara's crest twitched with what might have been amusement. You requested the Queen of the Jothiran Empire. Did you think she would simply rearrange her life for a human captive? No, I admitted. I suppose I didn't think that far ahead. The first dinner is tonight. 6th hour. Do not be late. And Captain Webb? She looked back. Her Majesty has not taken companionship in 40 cycles. Whatever you think you saw in her, you may find the reality more complex than your assumptions. After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed, an actual bed, not the hard platform in my cell, and wondered what I'd gotten myself into. The dinner was held in a private chamber adjacent to the Queen's quarters. I arrived exactly on time, wearing clothes that had been provided. Formal attire and Jatiran style, modified for my 2-armed anatomy. A servant showed me in, then departed with a bow that suggested I was either honored or about to be executed. I couldn't tell which. Shlara entered from a side door, and I stood immediately. She changed from her court robes into something simpler, though still elegant. Her skin was a calm blue-green. Sit, she said, gesturing to the low table between us. I find Earth customs of standing for females somewhat puzzling, but I appreciate the intent. Respect transcends species, I said, settling onto the cushion provided. Does it? She sat across from me with fluid grace. Or is it simply behavior learned to navigate social structures? Before I could answer, she continued, That was not rhetorical. I genuinely wish to know your thoughts. Servers entered with food, Zatiran cuisine I'd learned to tolerate during captivity, along with several dishes that looked suspiciously Earth-compatible. I think respect starts as learned behavior, I said carefully, but it becomes genuine when you understand the reasons behind it. And do you respect me, Captain Webb? Or do you simply recognize the power I hold over your life? 6 months ago? The latter. I respected your position because it would have been stupid not to. I met her eyes. Now? Both. You could have had me executed the first day. You gave me a tribunal instead. You could have ignored the Crethean child's age. You intervened personally. Those were matters of law and precedent. They were matters of conscience. Law and precedent would have supported execution in both cases. You chose differently. Shalara's skin shifted toward amber. The color I'd learned meant she was thinking deeply. You claim to have watched me. What else have you observed? That you read pre-expansion poetry in the garden every 3rd day. That you sometimes countermand your advisors and then spend hours reviewing documentation to ensure you made the right choice. That you touch the small crystal on your lower left wrist when you're nervous, even though you probably don't realize you do it. Her hand moved away from that exact crystal. You are observant, she said quietly. Or you are very good at extracting information from palace staff. I barely spoke to anyone for 6 months. I just watched. I paused. Your turn. What have you observed about me? She tilted her head, an expression I learned indicated surprise. You wish me to analyze you? Fair is fair. A ripple of gold crossed her skin, amusement. Very well. You maintain dignity even in chains. You learn languages quickly. Your Zatiron improves substantially between tribunals. You calculate odds constantly, but you also take wild risks. You destroyed our patrol vessel knowing you could not win, simply to give your crew time to escape. They made it? The words came out before I could stop them. Yes. Your sacrifice was noted in the official report, though it did not sway the tribunal. She studied me. You value loyalty over survival. An admirable trait, if somewhat impractical. The food was good. Better than prison rations, obviously, but also better than I'd expected. Why did you really make that request? Shlara asked finally. The truth, Captain Webb. I set down my utensil, considering my words. Because I'm alone 70 years from home. Because I've been watching the most interesting person I've ever met, and I wanted a chance to actually know her. Because I hesitated. Because I saw the way you looked at me during the second tribunal, when your advisors weren't watching. Like maybe you were curious, too. You presume much. I do, I admitted. But you agreed to this. So either I'm right, or you have some other agenda I haven't figured out yet. Perhaps both. She stood, and I rose with her. This dinner is concluded. We will meet again in 3 days. Use the time to learn more about our culture. I will not tolerate ignorance as an excuse for offense. Understood, Your Majesty. In private, she said, pausing at the door. You may call me Shlara, but only in private. Then she was gone, leaving me alone with servers who cleared the table in efficient silence, and the strange feeling that I'd just passed some kind of test I hadn't known I was taking. The next 3 days blurred together in a flood of learning. I'd been given access to the palace archives, and I consumed everything I could about Jathiran culture, history, and social customs. Their civilization was old, over 12,000 years of recorded history. Earth's entire written record would fit in a footnote. But what fascinated me most was their approach to leadership. Queens were chosen not by birth, but by a complex process of trials that tested intelligence, empathy, strategic thinking, and physical capability. Shlara had won her throne 42 cycles ago, roughly 30 Earth years, and had ruled longer than any queen in the last 5 centuries. No wonder she was isolated. She'd been at the top for so long. Everyone around her was either subordinate or scheming. The second dinner was more relaxed. We discussed Earth literature. She'd been reading human texts in preparation, which surprised me. Our conversation ranged from Shakespeare to modern sci-fi, and I found myself laughing genuinely for the first time since my capture. Your species has a peculiar obsession with apocalypse, Shlara observed. So many of your stories involve extinction or near extinction. Maybe because we've come close a few times, I said. Climate change, nuclear weapons, pandemics. We've had plenty of chances to wipe ourselves out. Yet, you persist. Stubborn creatures. Stubborn enough to request an alien queen's companionship while wearing chains. Her skin flashed gold. That was either bravery or foolishness. Can't it be both? We were discussing Jatiran music when Captain Vel-Shara entered without announcement, her crest fully extended in alarm. Your Majesty, the Krethian ambassador demands immediate audience. He claims to have evidence of human spy networks operating in the outer colonies. I felt my blood run cold, but Shlara's expression never changed. Tell the ambassador I will see him in 1 hour. And Vel-Shara? She stood, her skin shifting to the violet of calculation. Have your guards detain any Krathian operatives found within palace grounds? Quietly. Is there any truth to this claim? I don't know, I said honestly. I've been cut off from Earth for 6 months, but my mission was exploration, not espionage. Your mission was trespassing in sovereign space. We didn't know it was claimed. Our charts were... She moved to the window, all forearms crossed in a posture of stress. The Krethians have been pushing for military action against Earth for cycles. If they have evidence of human espionage, it gives them the justification they need. And I'm the perfect scapegoat, I said quietly. What will you do? I asked. What I must. She turned, her skin now a steely gray I'd never seen. The truth. Whatever it may be. I stood. For what it's worth, I'm telling you the truth. I don't know anything about spy networks. I believe you, she said, and the words carried weight, but belief is not evidence. And evidence is what will determine whether your species survives the next solar cycle. The weight of that statement hung between us. Can I help? I asked. How? You are a captive, Captain Webb. Whatever protection my interest in you has provided, it will not extend to matters of interstellar security. If there's evidence against Earth, I want to see it. Maybe I can refute it. Maybe I can provide context. Or maybe I paused. Maybe I can at least face whatever's coming with dignity. Shalara studied me for a long moment. Then her skin shifted toward that soft gold. Very well. But you will not speak unless I give permission. Understood? Yes, Your Majesty. In private, what did I tell you to call me? I smiled despite the tension. Yes, Shlara. The Krathian ambassador was a serpentine creature named Kesrath, his scales polished to mirror brightness and his eyes flat with calculation. He entered the formal audience chamber with an entourage of 6, each carrying data tablets and recording equipment. I stood 3 paces behind and to the left of Shlara's throne, positioned where I could observe, but clearly marked as subordinate. The assembled court filled the chamber. Word had spread quickly, and everyone wanted to witness this confrontation. Your Majesty, Kesrath began, his voice sibilant through translators, I bring grave news from the Krathian Republic. We have uncovered evidence of systematic human infiltration of our outer colonies, and, more disturbingly, evidence of similar operations targeting Jatiran space. Present your evidence, Shlara commanded. Her skin was the violet of calculation, revealing nothing. Kesrath gestured, and holographic displays filled the space between them. Star charts marked with human ship movements, communications logs, resource allocation documents. And at the center, a face I recognized, Commander Sarachan, my tactical officer. The one who'd escaped when I stayed behind. This human, identified as Commander Sarachan of the Earth vessel Wanderer, has been observed making contact with 8 different colony worlds across Krathian and disputed space. Each contact was followed by unusual equipment malfunctions, data breaches, or mysterious disappearances of local officials. Furthermore, Kesrath continued, we have decoded transmissions between Chen and Earth Command that explicitly reference asset placement and intelligence gathering operations. The humans are preparing for war, Your Majesty, and they are using your leniency toward their captain as cover for their activities. I felt every eye turn toward me. Captain Webb, Shlara said quietly, but her voice cut through the noise. You may speak. What is your response to these charges? I stepped forward, mind racing. The evidence looked damning, but something felt wrong about the timeline. Your Majesty, those communications logs are dated across the last 6 months. Commander Chen and my crew escaped when I was captured. If she's been conducting intelligence operations, she's been doing so without my knowledge or orders. Convenient, Kesrath hissed. The captain claims ignorance while his subordinate operates freely. I'm not claiming ignorance of her operations. I'm stating fact. I've been in your custody the entire time. I looked directly at the ambassador. But I noticed something interesting about your evidence. Every single incident occurs in disputed territory, space that both Krithia and the Zathihiran Empire claim, but neither fully controls. Why would Earth Command risk operations in the most scrutinized regions of space? Because humans are arrogant and foolish, Kesrath said, but there was a flicker in his eyes. Or because someone wanted those operations to be discovered, I said, the pieces clicking together. You're providing this evidence now, 6 months after my capture? Why wait? The investigation required time, or you required time to fabricate it. I turned to Shlara. Your Majesty, I request permission to examine the communications logs directly. This is an outrage. The word of the Krathian Republic will be verified, Shlara interrupted. Her skin had shifted toward amber, deep thought. Captain Webb's request is reasonable. If the evidence is genuine, it will withstand scrutiny. She gestured, and the holographic logs expanded. I moved closer, studying the encryption headers, timestamp data, and transmission signatures. And there it was, subtle but unmistakable. These transmissions use an outdated Earth encryption protocol, I said, one that was phased out 2 years before the Wanderer launched. Current Earth Command wouldn't use this protocol for sensitive communications. Perhaps your knowledge is outdated, Kesrath suggested, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Or perhaps these transmissions were created by someone who had access to old Earth encryption protocols, but not current ones. I met Shaylara's gaze. Like a Crethean intelligence operation that captured Earth vessels in the past and extracted their communication systems. Silent, Shlara commanded. She stood, and the authority in the gesture made even Kesrath close his mouth. Captain Velashara, secure the ambassador and his entourage for questioning. We will investigate these claims thoroughly. This is a violation of diplomatic brooding. This is my empire, Shalara said, her voice cold enough to freeze atmosphere, and I will not tolerate deception in my court. If your evidence is genuine, you will be released with apologies. If it is fabricated, you will face trial for attempted manipulation of the throne. Guards moved in, and Kesarath had enough sense not to resist. After they were removed, Shalara turned to me. You saw through his deception quickly. Impressive. I got lucky, I admitted. But it makes sense. The Krethians want war with Earth. Fake evidence of espionage would give them justification while driving a wedge between Earth and the Zahitheran Empire. Fake evidences indeed. She dismissed the court with a gesture, and soon we were alone except for Velshara. Captain Webb, you have potentially saved your species from war. I suspect that deserves some acknowledgement. I just pointed out inconsistencies. You're the one who chose to investigate rather than accept the evidence at face value. Perhaps that is why your request intrigued me. You see me as someone who seeks truth rather than someone who simply wields power. Isn't that what a good ruler does? In theory. In practice, truth is often inconvenient. She moved closer. I must verify your findings, and that will take time. But I wanted you to know I am pleased you were here tonight. So am I said quietly. Velshar cleared her throat. Your Majesty, security protocols require... Yes, I am aware. Shlara's eyes never left mine. We will speak again soon. As Velashara led me away, I glanced back to see Shlara standing alone in the vast chamber, her skin cycling through colors I couldn't read. She looked isolated despite her power. Or perhaps because of it. The investigation took 3 weeks. During that time, my schedule with Shlara changed. Instead of 3 dinners per week, she summoned me almost daily. Sometimes for meals, sometimes just for conversation as she worked through the evidence and political implications. The Crethean fabrication was confirmed within the first week. The transmissions were fake, created using stolen Earth communication systems from vessels captured years ago. The Crethean Republic, embarrassed by the exposure, withdrew Ambassador Kesrath and issued a formal apology, but the damage was done. Other species in the galactic community now questioned Crethean intelligence, and Earth's reputation improved by comparison. My crew is located, alive and well, having been conducting actual trade negotiations, not espionage. Commander Chen sent me a message through diplomatic channels, still following orders to avoid conflict. Hope you're surviving, Captain. Read this, Shlara said one evening, handing me a data tablet. Tell me what you think. It was a proposed treaty between Earth and the Zahitheran Empire. Trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, mutual defense clauses, the kind of document that could change the balance of power in this region of space. This is substantial, I said carefully. Earth would benefit enormously from this alliance. Your species has technologies we lack, particularly in faster-than-light navigation. Our manufacturing capabilities could enhance Earth's defensive infrastructure. She sat across from me in what had become our usual positions. But such a treaty requires trust, and trust requires foundation, personal connection. You want me to be that connection? I want you to tell me if you wish to be. Her skin shifted toward blue-green, calm, but with hints of amber uncertainty. You made a request in that throne room, Captain Webb. You said you wanted me. But that was 6 months ago, when you were desperate and facing execution. Now you are free, your species is safe, and you could request transport back to Earth. I set down the tablet. Is that what you think I want? I think I do not know what you want anymore. And I find that... She paused, sun settling. Then let me be clear. I met her 4 eyes, each one reflecting light differently. I don't want to go back to Earth. I want to stay here. With you. Why? Because every conversation we have is fascinating. Because you challenge me intellectually in ways no one ever has. Because when you laugh, which doesn't happen often enough, it's the best sound I've ever heard. I leaned forward. Because I requested you in that throne room, and I meant it. Meant all of it. And now I know you well enough to want you even more. Her skin flashed through rapid colors. gold, amber, violet, green, and finally a shade of deep blue I'd never seen. "This cannot be simple," she said quietly. "I am queen. You are human. Our physiologies are incompatible for certain forms of companionship. The court would be scandalized. Other species would question my judgment, and you would be bound to a life of political complexity you cannot fully understand yet." "Then why?" "Because nothing worth having is simple." I reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. "And because I think you're tired of being alone at the top. I think you've been waiting for someone who sees you as Shlara, not just as the queen. I think maybe I can be that person if you'll let me." She looked at my hand, then at my face. Slowly, deliberately, she extended her lower right hand to meet mine. The touch sent a small electric sensation through my fingers, our biologies reacting to each other at a fundamental level. "I have not allowed myself this," she whispered. "Not in 40 cycles. The advisors, the politics, the constant weight of the throne, it seemed easier to simply bear it alone. It doesn't have to be, but it would be complicated. We would face opposition. There would be those who claim I am compromised, that my feelings cloud my judgment. We would have to be careful, discreet. And still, the rumors would spread." "Let them spread," I said. "You told me once that Jatiran culture values directness, so be direct."
"You want this."
"The rest is just noise." She laughed then, and I was right. It was the best sound I'd ever heard. "You make it sound so simple, Marcus Webb." It was the first time she'd used my first name. "The best things usually are, Shalara." "Then hear this, clearly and directly. I want you to stay. Not as political tool, not as bridge between species, but as companion, as the person who sees me rather than the crown." "I accept," I said. "Good." Her skin settled into that soft gold. "Because I have already announced to my advisors that you will be staying as permanent cultural liaison." Velshara nearly resigned on the spot. "You told them before asking me?" "I am queen. I do not ask permission." But her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Though in this case I calculated the odds that you would refuse at approximately 0. Arrogant, accurate." I pulled her closer, gently, mindful of our size difference. She was taller, stronger, but in this moment she felt almost fragile. "Shalara? Yes? Thank you for giving me a chance. Thank you for being foolish enough to request me." She pulled back slightly. "Now we must discuss protocols. If you are to remain, there will be expectations. Training in diplomatic procedure, formal education in our legal systems, security clearances, public appearances, all of which I'll handle," I said. "But right now, in this moment, can we just be two people who want to know each other better? No titles, no politics, just us." She considered this, then nodded. "Just us, for tonight." We talked until the palace lights dimmed for sleep cycle. About her childhood in the trials, about my life on Earth before the stars, about fears and hopes and the strangeness of finding connection across species and circumstance. As I finally left for my quarters, Velshara was waiting outside. "Captain Webb," she said, her crest neutral but her skin showing hints of resigned acceptance, "I still do not trust you completely. But Her Majesty is lighter. I have not seen her this way in cycles. I intend to keep it that way. See that you do, because if you hurt her, I will make good on my promise. Weeks of suffering." "I believe you," I said. "But you don't have to worry. I'm not going anywhere." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. The Queen deserves someone who chooses to stay." The treaty between Earth and the Zatiran Empire was formalized, opening trade routes and establishing diplomatic relations. My crew was granted safe passage home, though Commander Chen sent another message. "You always did make interesting decisions, Captain. This might be your best one yet." I divided my time between official duties and private moments with Shalara. The court adapted to my presence, some with acceptance, others with grudging tolerance. There were still those who whispered that the Queen was compromised, that the human had manipulated his way to power. Let them whisper. What mattered was the way Shalara smiled when I entered a room, the way our conversations ranged from philosophy to terrible poetry to the best ways to negotiate with stubborn admirals, the way she trusted me with small vulnerabilities she showed no one else. We established routines. Morning walks in the garden while she read poetry, evening discussions of diplomatic challenges, late-night conversations about everything and nothing. It wasn't perfect. We argued. I pushed her to be more lenient with certain protocols. She pushed me to understand the necessity of others. Cultural differences created misunderstandings. Physical limitations meant certain forms of intimacy were impossible, though we found our own ways to be close. But it worked. One evening, during a state dinner celebrating the first Zatiran joint research mission, Shalara stood to make a speech. The hall fell silent as she addressed the assembled dignitaries from a dozen species. 6 months ago, she began, a human captain stood in chains in this very hall. He had violated our borders, destroyed our property, and resisted arrest. By all rights, he should have been executed. I shifted uncomfortably at my seat near the throne, but he made a request that was unconventional, unprecedented. Some might say foolish. Her skin shifted to soft gold as she looked directly at me. He requested me, and in that request, he changed everything. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. He changed how I viewed his species, how I viewed the possibilities of cooperation between different peoples, and, she paused, how I viewed myself. Not as queen alone, bearing the weight of empire in isolation, but as a person capable of connection despite the throne. She raised a glass in the Zatiran gesture of honor to Captain Marcus Webb, who was brave enough to speak truth in the face of power, and to the alliance between our peoples, built on that foundation of honesty. The hall erupted in the traditional response, a harmonic tone that vibrated through my chest. Later, in the quiet of her private quarters, Shalara sat beside me by the window overlooking the city. "That was quite a speech," I said. I meant every word. She leaned against me, her skin cycling through peaceful blues and greens. "You know what I realized today?" "What?" "When you made that request, I thought you were asking for me to grant you my time, my presence, as though I was giving you a gift." She turned to look at me. "But you gave me something far more valuable. You gave me permission to be more than my title, to want something for myself rather than the empire. You always had that permission. But I needed someone to show me it was possible." She took my hand in hers. "Thank you, Marcus." "For what?" "For being foolish enough to want me when it made no logical sense. For staying when you could have left. For seeing Shalara when everyone else sees only the queen." I squeezed her hand gently. "Best request I ever made." "Agreed." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights below. Somewhere down there, my old cell stood empty. Somewhere beyond the atmosphere, Earth spun in the darkness, 73 light-years away, and somewhere in the palace, guards gossiped about the human who'd won the queen's heart with 8 words. None of it mattered as much as this moment. "Marcus?" Shalara said softly. "Yes. If circumstances were different, if I were not queen, if you were not human, if the galaxy were simpler..." "We'd be exactly where we are," I interrupted gently. "Because those circumstances are what made us who we are. You wouldn't be the person I love without the weight of the crown. I wouldn't be here without the mission that brought me to your space." She went very still. "You said love." "I did. That is the first time you have used that word." I wanted to be sure I meant it. I turned to face her fully. "I love you, Shalara. The queen in the person, the strength and the vulnerability, all of it." Her skin flashed through brilliant colors. Gold and silver, and shades I had no names for. In my language, we have a word, Kestala. It means the person who sees your true self and chooses to stay anyway. What's the human equivalent? But the closest concept would be soulmate. "And is that what I am?" "Yes," she said simply, though I fought acknowledging it for months. A queen should not have a Kestala. It is a vulnerability, a potential weakness. But I find I do not care anymore. She pulled me closer, and our foreheads touched, a Zatiran gesture of deep intimacy. "I love you too, Marcus Webb. Against all logic, against all tradition, against the whispers of the court. I love you." Above us, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, and in that moment, in the arms of an alien queen 73 light-years from home, I was exactly where I belonged. The hall had fallen silent when I made my request, but now our lives were filled with sound and light and the endless complexity of 2 people choosing each other despite impossible odds. And I would make that same request again, every single time.